Hi, you're watching Hindustan Times and I'm Aditi Prasad. India and the United States have inked a landmark agreement that will allow sharing of high-end military technology, classified satellite data, and critical information between the two countries. I have with me former Foreign Secretary Colonel SIBAL and former Air Marshal KUKREJA to understand what BECA, this key defense agreement, means for India. Welcome to the show, sirs.
Thank you.
Now, let me start with Air Marshal Dheeraj Kukreja, sir. The basic exchange and cooperation agreement with the United States. In the context of the ongoing standoff in Ladakh, what extra muscle does it provide India with?
Well, we have our own capability, our satellites giving us pictures, and the pictures giving us a lot of information. But not all of it would be real time. This would be real time information, and the data that we would get from it, the digital inputs that we would get from this, would help us to aim our missiles, our armed drones, and definitely tell us about the Chinese buildup, literally minute by minute, which if we are dependent on our own satellites, then it is as and when the satellite coverage or the satellite passes over the area that we
Right.
get this information.
So that's what you mean, that it is going to provide us key insights, from what I hear you saying, into what exactly the build-up on the LAC is like on the Chinese side.
It would be a real-time information. So it is as things are evolving, we would be getting the inputs. That is very critical at this stage because China is known for its deceptive moves. And on one hand, it says it wants disengagement and de-escalation, and the other hand, it's building up as if it is planning a large offensive in that area. And it has, to whatever extent, it has the advantage of terrain, which we don't have in that area. We have to therefore, maintain our positions in the heights and literally look down upon them so that we can plan our moves accordingly. And if China does something and our satellite is not in a position to give us the picture, it is the inputs that we would get from the US satellites, which
Right.
would help us to plan our next move.
Mr. Sibal, let me bring you into the conversation at this point. It is going to give us real-time data and especially help us preempt a lot of what can be preempted because of that data coming into us, the satellite imagery coming into us much earlier than anticipated. In your opinion, what are the key takeaways from of course, this is the fourth agreement in a row that India has signed with the United States, which is critical in nature and which is military in nature over the last few years. What is your key takeaway from this agreement?
From the BECA itself, clearly, as has been explained by the Air Marshal, it will give us the advantage of getting real-time information on Chinese movements. But that's only part of the problem. The
Right.
other is matching the Chinese capabilities in terms of ease of access. That means more developed military infrastructure, which takes time to build. And then, of course, being able to match whatever China puts in position in terms of its heavy equipment and military capabilities. There, of course, we are saying that we have made mirror deployments. We've also brought in tanks and artillery and everything else. So I suppose we are fairly matched. But whether in every area we are equally matched or that we have to get additional advanced equipment from the Americans, as for example, armed drones, that is a matter that will be no doubt pursued. But purely in terms of availability of information, certainly this is a force multiplier. Other things, of course, depend on how much grit you have, how much determination you have, how much self-confidence you have, how much you're ready to take on the Chinese, how much we are able to prepare for the winter, because that imposes a huge burden on us and also means that our capacities are stressed. We have to get a lot of high altitude equipment and clothing and everything else, which we are doing. I think we are doing a commendable job. But that's one aspect. The other is purely the political aspect. That this 2+2 dialogue has, no matter what we say that, it happens towards the end of the year and this and that, but, the elections are only a week away and it could easily have been postponed. And for the new administration to have decided on in terms of their availability to pursue this dialogue. But the fact that this has been held even when the elections are just in a few days, and the two gentlemen who come here are very high-level people in the Trump administration. And more importantly, this is taking place at a time when the Chinese have committed this aggression in Ladakh, and the outlook is not very clear as to what the Chinese intend to do. The political messaging in this, I think, is very important. And I've been reading some Chinese newspaper accounts, and they seem to be fairly worried about BECA, and in fact are trying to play down a little bit the additional capabilities this will give us, pointing out, for example, that all this data and everything else, and here Air Marshal can actually enlighten your audience, whether this data or the terrain mapping and everything else will be available for our Russian equipment, or is it only limited to the US supplied equipment? I think that's an important aspect to be looked into, because I'm not a technical expert, but maybe this question can be put to Air Marshal KUKREJA, whether this gives us the capability of using this data and geodesic data and geospatial mapping and accuracy for all our equipment, whether it's indigenous or Russian supplied or Israeli supplied or French supplied.
I think that's a question directly for you, Mr. Air Marshal KUKREJA, that Mr. SIBAL is asking. So can I request you to take that?
Yeah. Well, you see, this information has to be matched, and or as they put it in the military parlance, that it has to be married up with the with the equipment on ground or in the air. But that I am not a technical expert, but yes, definitely the Indian Armed Forces would have made some arrangements to get that information and use it accordingly. Now we have the AWACS, which have got the Israeli radar, and Israeli is interoperable with US equipment. So I'm quite sure that the inputs that come into the AWACS, the Falcons, as we with the Falcon radar, or the on the platform may be Russian because it's an IL-76 platform, but the equipment on board is all Israeli. And when it is Israeli, then I think it would be interoperable with all this data coming in. Similarly, in the Su-30 aircraft, and the new Rafales, I have a feeling that this would be coming in. That is why the urgency from our side also to go in and sign this BECA, because without using that information, you see, you can't do it manually. You can't use digital data manually.
Right.
So that has to be kept in mind. So the AWACS and the AEWC aircraft that we have got, our own indigenous AEWC aircraft on board the Embraer platform, has all interoperable equipment. Apart from that, the P-8 aircraft that the Navy has got, the P-8I as they call it, I stands for India. that also has, that is an American aircraft. It's supplied by the Boeing. And that would be a very big help. In fact, that will become probably the backbone. As it is, the P-8 and the AWACS have been flying in that area, in the eastern Ladakh region and along
Right.
the LAC. To gauge the Chinese movements. Now, with the direct digital inputs coming in, real-time inputs coming in, the P-8, I think, would become the backbone.
Okay. So,
And the P-8 will not just be an advantage in eastern Ladakh. P-8 will also be a big advantage in the maritime locations, in the maritime strategy to be molded accordingly.
Fair enough. I get your point. Let me just talk about the fact that yes, this is a landmark deal. You've emphasized how it's going to, help India militarily and strategically, not just overall, but especially in context with what's happening and what's brewing at the LAC with China. But let me just move away to that and talk about, two Trump officials, key Trump officials, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and Defense Secretary Mark Esper are here in India. Now, Mike Pompeo, immediately after signing of this, agreement, had very strong words for China today and said that the US stands with India to deal with any kind of threat and to defend its sovereignties, to quote unquote. That's a very strong statement pro India, and that they're standing with India, and actually calling out China very openly and very boldly, which actually the name China has not really been taken before this by many people in the Indian establishment in so many words. What do you think this means? How crucial? Clearly, India is crucial. India and the United States, the strategies are converging as far as China is concerned, and especially this aggressive, expansionist China. Mr. SIBAL, that's
Well,
for
I
you.
think I don't think we should exaggerate the import of these statements in terms of the American commitment to fight our battles on our behalf. The Chinese simply hate Pompeo because they see him as targeting China everywhere that he goes. And if you read the Chinese commentaries, they're very unkind towards Pompeo. That's one. The other is that in the joint statement that we've issued after 2+2, China is not mentioned by name anywhere. Though, of course, if you read a lot of the articles in the joint statement, you can easily conclude that a large part of it on the Indo-Pacific side is directed at China. It's very clear. And
Exactly.
Pompeo has, crossed the T's and dotted the I's publicly by talking about India and United States joining hands.
So they may not have mentioned it in the agreement, but they may not have mentioned it in the agreement, sir, the name China, but, in the press conference, he gave out, he spoke very strongly and, he condemned China. Yeah.
Yeah, but he used this occasion to express his American objectives in terms of how the quadrilateral framework and the Indo-Pacific concept should evolve, with China as the threat against which all the four countries and others, if they can join later and promote and accept this concept, would be dealing with it. That's very, very clear. And actually, in a sense, Pompeo is doing our work. We don't have to mention China or say anything about China. The moment our interlocutor, the United States, says China and we keep quiet, it's very clear that our thinking is the same, though the expression of the thinking may be different, because United States has a very large canvas of problems with China across the board, because China is actually trying to now match and excel US power and compete with it, and in critical areas surpass it. And this BRI and the critical technologies that they have, etc., are part of that. But if you look at the joint statement, I think there's a lot of very important things about supply chains, for example, critical supply chains.
Right.
It's mentioned in the joint statement, and what we know what it is, that the idea is to move out these critical supply chains from China. There is on the BRI has been indirectly attacked. If you look at connectivity and how the connectivity is described in the joint statement, it puts together all the reservations that each country has with regard to the BRI. That has been put in. And apart from that, of course, various other things that have been announced in reinforcing India-US defense ties. So I think the message is very clear, and Pompeo has made it even more explicit that the two countries should and would work together in the future to deal with the mounting Chinese threat, which is not only to India, but to the United States, to Southeast Asia, and in fact, to my mind, the world at large, because Xi Jinping's ambitions have been publicly expressed, and by 2049, he wants to be the dominant power, or at worst, a G2, where China and United States are the dominant powers, and others have then to choose which side they have to be on.
Right. You rightly talked about, sir, that, the agreement mentions maritime security, counterterrorism, open connectivity, resilient supply chains, all of this, and to a very large extent, some of it very favorable to India, because if they're really talking about shifting supply chains out of China, then India is obviously one of the preferred next best choices to do that. But let me just come back to the situation at the LAC and pose this question to Air Marshal KUKREJA. How do you think China is going to respond to this? Because as Sir pointed out, that Mr. SIBAL pointed out that China is trying to downplay it, but they are clearly rattled by this whole BECA agreement. And how do you think that China is going to respond at the LAC? Are you going to see, because that's what China does, when it's rattled, it goes the whole hog.
I don't think it will go the whole hog, but it is definitely rattled. And it was rattled not well before the BECA, because it did not expect such a response from India, from the Indian political system, knowing or having studied the Indian political system, and knowing the Indian military capabilities. They were foxed. They were absolutely, if I could use the word, bamboozled by the Indian response. And so BECA has just added to their discomfort. And now they will definitely try to find out an easy way out by saying that, okay, we'll discuss this LAC, because they've already spoken about the LAC as what it was in 1959. Which right. India said we don't agree to it, which India has again responded strongly that we don't agree to this. But the thing is that we have to, we cannot afford to let down our guard, because as you said, to go the whole hog, they may just surprise us. Surprise us. But then in winters, it is difficult to go the whole hog. They can just hang on to their positions and move during the winters. If anything, that would, if it comes up, that would come up is sometimes in June next year, because that is when the snows have melted, then the temperatures have risen slightly, because the winter is extremely harsh in that region, and it is not just the snow, the heavy snowfall, it is the strong winds, which which are very difficult to handle equipment in that, whether it is RT guns, whether it is tanks, or whether it is a normal troop transporter. So if anything that will come up is June, not before June.
Right. So so what you're really saying is that for now you don't see China, or at least the situation at the LAC, not to escalate further, but you're just saying that the Chinese, because of the winters, harsh winters, but that the Chinese may just hold on to their positions and not budge. Which is how is India prepared to face out the winters at the LAC?
Well, we have, as Mr. SIBAL pointed out earlier in the discussions, we are preparing for the winters, or we have prepared for the winters. Usually, we do have, if I could call it, an experience from Siachen. So we know how to handle the cold weather and do what to make our troops safe inside their igloos. We call them the igloos, but they're not the traditional Eskimo igloos. But
Right.
we have the igloos. We have the other equipment to keep the igloos warm, and we have quite a robust supply system that goes on from the plains, from Chandigarh to Leh to Thois, and by helicopters to further ahead. And with our airfields at DBO, the Daulat Bed, Oldi, and Chushul also active, our aircraft can land there and offload equipment. The logistics chain, our logistics chain is quite well established.
Right.
So, as far preparations for the winter is concerned, I think the Indian Army has done a lot, and the Indian Air Force is there because Indian Air Force has the experience of so many years of supplying to Siachen. I myself have done that in my younger days, if I could call it. But that is how it is. We have a very robust system in place.
Okay, so a robust system in place. You think China is not going to react very, maybe not going to, but you never know with China. But because of the winters, they may be forced to just hold on to their positions at the LAC and continue this standoff throughout the long. Yes, Mr. KUKREJA, you're saying something.
During the winters, they cannot launch a major offensive along the LAC, but in pockets, they may try to test out the Indian defenses. In small pockets, whether it is at Pangong Tso, whether it is a little north towards Galwan or further north towards Karakoram, because they are upset about the road to Karakoram via DBO.
Right.
They are upset about that. So they may want to test out what is the condition of the road at so-and-so place or so-and-so place A, B, C, to test out what is the Indian logistics chain, how is the Indian Army coping up. They may like to test it out, and if they can occupy the territory and disrupt the road movement or the air movement or whatever it is, so be it. They would be quite happy with that. So it may be in small pockets. They may try to, or I would say they will try. They not just may, in small, during the small durations of a weather break, when you have a little break in the winter, you have some bright sunshine or something like that. They may just put in something.
Okay, so what you're saying is that they may try in pockets, but with BECA in our corner, maybe it will also give India a chance to test out the high-end military and the sharing of classified satellite data and critical information between the two countries, if that happens. But let me just come back and address this one last question, and then we'll wind up on something that Mr. SIBAL, you said, that that India doesn't need to shout from the rooftops because Mr. Pompeo is taking China's name loud and clear all the time. But at the last Quad meeting also, India did not mention China by name. Neither did Japan or Australia, because of whatever interest they have, the economic interest that they have in China. But the US was again there also, the only one who called out China's actions. Do you believe that it was an opportunity lost by India to come out strongly against China's aggression, given what's happening at the LAC?
No, not at all, not at all. We have to make up our mind. Do we want to have a military clash with China, or do we want to explore to the hilt the possibility of a military disengagement and avoidance of an actual military conflict through a process of negotiations?
Right.
And then we have to look very responsibly whether what we do, what we say, either alone or in conjunction with others, would help the process of disengagement and de-escalation or complicate it further beyond a point of retrieval. Now, I think we are acting responsibly through our actions in terms of participation in the Quad, agreeing that it should be now an annual meeting, agreeing to Australia joining the Malabar exercise, signing the BECA agreement, plus some other things that have been mentioned in terms of strengthening our ties with the United States of America. The writing on the wall is very clear to China in terms of the direction we are heading. And
Right.
the BRI project is being contested. Pompeo is also going to Maldives and Sri Lanka and wherever else.
Yeah, Sri Lanka
our
immediately
neighborhood.
now, right?
Yeah, which is very much I'm sure, supported by us, because the United States is bringing to bear its diplomatic weight to
Right.
caution these countries against becoming too close to China, and then that affects maritime Silk Road strategy of China. And if that is affected, it helps us. So therefore, I think we are playing our cards very well, very responsibly, and there's no need for us to speak out loudly and use anti-China rhetoric when in actual fact, we are giving very powerful signals to China that the more you misbehave, the more you will be hurting your own interests and your objective that India should not become too close to the United States. That will not work. You can't have
You're
it both ways.
defeating that very
That you kick
objective
us
because
around.
you're right.
That you can't kick us around, and then if you want to protect ourselves, you say, no, you know right to protect yourself. They can't have it both ways. And China got away
Right.
with this kind of a thing in the South China Sea, and it is to the great credit of the Indian government that we have stood up to China, even when the United States did not stand up to China in the South China Sea. And the Japanese are also very cautious. But we have matched 40,000 troops, and we said, all right, if you are bent on forcing on us a military conflict, we will fight you.
Right, and possibly, especially coming on heels of the fact that Esper and Pompeo being here 1 week before the elections, if China really wanted that, that if they by doing this they're going to sort of make India move away from the United States, which is what their end goal was. They're driving us further into each other's arms, really. And they probably were not expecting this kind of a response from India, as you rightly pointed out. BECA deal now, instead of waiting for the US elections to get over, it really reflects a growing confidence in the India-United States relationship that the ties will move forward no matter who sits in the White House. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and thank you for joining me. Mr. SIBAL, Air Marshal KUKREJA, thank you for your time. Keep watching Hindustan Times. We'll keep getting you more updates as they happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.